Welcome to the Ideal Investor Show. This is the podcast where we help you challenge your mindset and discover where you are. Tired of stories about other people's success? We can help you change your life, determine your time freedom point, and join us on the journey to financial success. Let's go. Hey everybody, I don't know if you have seen it, but lately there has been a lot of anticipation that the interest rates for mortgages are going to come down. And part of that anticipation is oftentimes that they actually start coming down a little bit, right? It's kind of like taking the news or the actual lowering of interest rates by the Federal Reserve ahead of time. Now, what that has done is that I have seen at the worst situation earlier, I think it was last year in the fall or something, about a year ago or so, where interest rates for investment property mortgages were as high as almost 9%. And in some cases, I have heard and read about even higher, but we never had it. The highest I think that we have had was 9%. And so the latest deal that one of our mentoring clients was able to close was at 7.25%. So that's obviously quite a difference. It's pretty close to 2% less than at the height of the market. So I saw an article on a website called Housing Wire, and the headline was that refinancing rates had increased to 17% of all loans in mortgages, and that is the highest it's been in the last 3 years. And the article then described that people are kind of starting to look into refinancing, which begs the question in a service basically to you as the audience, anybody who is or wants to be an investor or has investment properties with us or with somebody else, is it time to consider refinancing? And I would say even if you currently have a 9% mortgage on an investment property, we probably, if you did this with us, analyze this property to make sure that you still have appropriate cash flow after everything is paid, including those 9% mortgage interest. 7.25% as you can get right now, or maybe 7%. Yes, on first glance, it's 2% less. But I would say, if you ask my advice, it's too early. I actually would go potentially one step further and say something slightly controversial. I think Housing Wire is not doing anybody a favor by hyping the fact that there are more refinances than there used to be. And you have to keep in mind, the market for a while was more refinancing. More than 50% of all loans were refinancing versus new loans. So 17% is still really low. Keeping in mind that not every refinancing is done because the rates went down. Some refinancing is done because certain things happened to the mortgage or ownership changed or stuff like that, right? So it can be something internal or the servicer changed or these kind of things. But is it time, when the interest rates are now approaching 7% for investment property loans and mortgages? I would say no, even if you have a relatively high interest rate. And part of the reason I want to say this is, for one, you cannot refinance constantly, right? Normally, most lenders and most organizations want to see that a new loan after the refinancing is in place for at least a year. Now you have to ask yourself, if I refinance now for 7.25% because my current mortgage interest rate is 9%, then what happens if it goes down to 6% in the next 12 months, which is not unrealistic in my view? Then you cannot refinance until you have actually had your new mortgage for a year. But the other thing why you wouldn't want to do it over and over again in short intervals is because obviously the refinancing is not free. You have to pay origination costs and closing costs and all that kind of stuff. So you probably have to consider between $3,000 and $5,000 of cost to refinance. Now, obviously, if you go from 9% to 7%, you get that cost back because you're getting more cash flow out of the same property. Because your monthly mortgage payment is going to go down, but your rental income is going to remain the same. So that difference goes into your pocket to pay off the cost for the refinance. But you won't get to a point where the difference, if you say, okay, I do this now, and then in a year I do another one, in a year the difference will not make $5,000, right? So that's why you want to wait until the spread is really significant. I would say anything below 2.5 to 3% spread, I wouldn't do it. Now, there's a huge difference to go from 9% to 6% than going from 6% to 3%, right? So as the likelihood of further reductions is getting less and less, you want to try to get to the point, if we ever get back to 3%, where you kind of try to be as close to the bottom as possible. But right now, where it's very, very likely that we are going to see reductions in the Federal Reserve interest rate for the next 15 months, right now, just because it's come down a little bit, in my opinion, not yet the right time to start twitching and refinancing. I think we will see a much more significant lowering of the interest rates after the election, sometime probably, I don't know, December is typically not a good time, but maybe in February or March next year. And that's when we obviously going to have another episode, and I will inform you if I think rates have gotten to a point where consideration of refinancing really makes sense. Right now, when it's still in above 7% for investment loans, I wouldn't touch it yet. That's basically how you can expect the work in our mentoring program to be. Right? It's not just to help you understand and change your mindset and become a business owner and find investment properties and help you to get the investment. But as part of the mentoring program, we also talk about what should you do, what strategy should you follow, what are the triggers, what are the numbers that you should be aware, when do you take action in changing something in your existing portfolio, and when do you mainly focus on growing your portfolio and leave the assets and the properties you already have alone and let them just work as they should without a whole lot of influence. That's part of the mentoring program. And so if you want to know all the kinds of things that we do when we do mentoring, I would like to ask you to go to idealinvestorshow.com and find the button to book a call. Now, if you say, okay, well, I'm maybe not ready for the mentoring program, a few other things I would like to ask you to take action. One is download this episode that you're listening to. And if you can, do us the favor and download other episodes as well, and then rate the show. Whether you're on Apple or on Spotify or on Google or wherever you hear this episode and listen to our show, that will make a huge difference. It's kind of the same thing. I'm sure you have seen it on YouTube, where people always say, please subscribe and ring the notification bell and that kind of stuff and give it a thumbs up. Well, for podcasts, the same thing is downloading the episode and give the show a rating. That will really make a huge difference. And then finally, I want to say, if you like what you hear from this podcast, I would also like to invite you to join us on Substack, because we're putting out even more really valuable information, daily notes, twice a week. We have articles, we send out newsletters and stuff like that. So for really getting a deep dive in all the things relevant to investing in real estate, I would really think you should join us in Substack under Idea Redcore. So I look forward to that. And if you book a call, I really hope we can talk soon and I can tell you all the things that are part of the mentoring that we offer. So with that being said, be well and stay safe, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.